Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV Whiskey 1. Good vibrations. I first obtained my novice class license as WA0 Ocean Kilo Victor in 1966. That was 52 years, almost 53 years ago now, and because it was in March. And back then you had to learn the code in order to get a ham radio license. You had to learn 5 words a minute for the novice and 13 words a minute for the general. There was no extra at the time. Well, yes, there was, but that was 20 words a minute. But very few people got that license. As time went on, though, the requirements for ham radio licensing became, it would seem, easier, particularly when there was no longer any requirement that you need to learn the Morse code in order to become a radio ham. You could get a ham radio license without learning the code. You could still use CW as a mode, but you did not have to learn CW to get a license. A lot of people bemoan that change, saying that it has resulted in a decrease in the quality of people, and I'm more or less being kind of brutally literal here. Although an increase in numbers, a decrease in quality of the people who have ham radio licenses. Now, I'm not going to remark on that. I don't think that's necessarily true, because there are so many more exotic new modes to use today than there were back in 1966. So much more technical things that a ham radio operator must know in order to be a fully rounded ham radio individual. And I regrettably am not so very round, being stuck back in the old CW mode, both figuratively and literally. But I wonder sometimes whether or not well, there is one thing about CW that is definitely true and will always be true, I think. CW works when all other modes fail. And you'd say, oh, well, there are modes that can get through the noise more efficiently than CW. There are modes that can communicate when CW simply can't because of poor conditions, etc., etc. But in one sense, CW will always hold the top end of the simplicity and availability roster, and that is the fact that all you really need is a single bipolar transistor or field effect transistor, a few resistors, capacitors, a coil, and a key, and you can build a CW transmitter. That's all you need. And for receiving, well, any receiver will do. An ordinary AM receiver with a beat frequency oscillator will do. Shortwave receiver will do. So the equipment is as simple as you can get. And if all of these other highfalutin devices, for some reason or another, are compromised, either because they, being complicated, are more likely to malfunction sometimes, or because someone hacked into something. A lot of them have software that's hackable if you connect it to the internet. There's so much more complication with these new modes, whereas CW is at the height of simplicity. And that's why I say, if the whole world, they say the WHTF, stuff hits the fan. They say someday the stuff is going to hit the fan. Well, all these other modes will no longer work. CW still will. And ham radio operators, believe me, will have one great advantage if they know the code and if they know how to build and use the simplest of simple CW equipment. And that's why sometimes I'm a little bit prejudiced when it comes to CW. I just happen to think it's the best mode because I like it the most, but also perhaps because it was the first one devised, and it'll probably be the last one left when all the others have failed for one reason or another. Stan Gibilisco, W1GV, signing off, saying 73 and so long, which, in the beginning, in the end, and all the time in between, has always translated in CW2 da-da-da-da-da-da.